Hello, I'm Rachel DeGuzman, producer of engagement programs at Geva Theater Center. Welcome to the Geva Prologue for the production of Yoga Play. Geva Prologues are lively, informative, pre-recorded chats that connect directors, designers, and cast members with regional creatives, thinkers, and doers. Prologues delve more deeply into the world beyond the script by exploring a play's origin, providing context, and sometimes the creative process that shaped the production. I'm here today with the founder and owner of Breathe, Cyndi Weis, in conversation with yoga play director Melissa Crespo. This unscripted and unrehearsed conversation begins now as I fade to black.
Hi, Cyndi.
Hi, Melissa. Nice to meet you.
You too. Let's talk yoga.
Let's do it. There's nothing I love to talk about more, unless maybe my grandchildren. I definitely love to talk about them, but I do. I'm happy to talk about yoga for sure.
Awesome. I would love to know about your studio. You're based in Rochester, I assume.
Yes, we are based in Rochester, but we also have a location in Syracuse, and we're coming up on our 20th anniversary, which is kind of crazy when I think about it, because I started Breathe as a hobby and never really expected it to be anything more than that. But it sort of took on a life of its own. And as that was happening, I don't know, I would just kind of like walk through each door as it presented itself. And it's grown very organically. My origins with yoga go back a long time. I was actually introduced to yoga when I was 12 years old by my mom. And I remember my mom, this would have been back in the early 1970s. My mom would be out in the living room in front of the television doing yoga with one of the earlier yoga teachers. Her name was Lilias Folan. And my mom would be practicing yoga. And at that time, I was a very overweight kid. And as all my friends and brothers were outside, playing and running and doing sports, I was not. And so my mom, she bought me an album and a book about yoga. And I started on my own. I would just go in my bedroom, lock the door, and, just look at the book and listen to the record and start sort of putting my body through this thing called yoga. And, looking back, I know that that's really when I started to make peace with my own body. So it goes back a long ways. For me, it's a passion. It's definitely something that's been in my life on and off through the years. But Breathe as a business started in 2002, so about 20 years ago.
Oh, congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment. And I love the origin story of that.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, Melissa, I used to say all the time, I have no business being in business. I have a degree in mental health counseling, and I'm a registered dietitian. So I spent time in the area of fitness. After I started to make peace with my body, I became more active, and, and I was 12 years old. So I grew up, my body changed. I started to become more physical, liked doing physical things. But the business of yoga was something that I actually really have zero background in. And that's why when I say it started as a hobby, I still remember I went on this, it was a yoga retreat back in 2000, 1999, something like that. And I just loved it because it kind of combined a different type of yoga, more of a physical based yoga than what I was used to. And I loved it. And I came home and I immediately told my husband, I'm going to go back next year and I'm going to do this again. And so he's like, yeah, do that. And so the next year came, and I'm like, oh, it's a teacher training. I definitely don't want to teach yoga ever. But I want to go back. So I went back, I did this whole training, never expecting that I would teach yoga. And when I got back to Rochester, literally it was the next morning, I was telling my husband, if I were to put all the things that I actually know how to do under one roof, I'd have a yoga studio where that when you came in to do yoga, you'd sign in for yoga, but you'd order a smoothie or something healthy, to be a juice to be ready for you after class, like sort of bringing in what I knew about nutrition and what was actually lacking locally at that time. And if you caught out of the corner of your eye, like, a new yoga mat or a pair of pants or something like that you could wear to class, it would just all be right there. And he's like, well, you should do that. And I'm like, I don't know how to do business. I really don't know. And that day I was literally going from my house on the way to Wegmans to get some groceries. And there was a lot of traffic at the light in the village of Pittsford. So I cut through this parking lot and I saw like space for rent. And I'm like, you know what? If I was ever going to do that thing, this is where I'd put it. And so that's one step led to another, literally one step. But even now, 20 years later, looking back, the concept's the same. We have a yoga studio, a meditation studio where you sign in for yoga. And if you want to grab something healthy to drink afterwards, you can. If there's something you need to make your practice more supported, there's a retail boutique in all of the locations. And over time, each of those areas have sort of fleshed out and expanded. So it's been an organic growth. Like I said, I knew nothing about business, but it's been fun. It's been a great challenge in lots of ways, and it's really fulfilled my life in so many ways.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. So it's interesting hearing your story, because in Yoga Play by Deepika Guha, if I had your introduction to yoga, I would probably have a very different relationship to it. But now through this play, I have a better relationship with yoga because I was a dancer as a kid and in acting class, and I never really liked sports, but taking dance since age 4, I could never do a split, even though I had been trying all my life, and then I haven't danced since I was a teenager, but I remember trying yoga in my early 20s and feeling like I just, the similar feeling of when I was a kid where I can't do a split and not feeling like I was doing anything properly, not feeling like it was for me, because yoga in a mainly Western, atmosphere is very all about fitness and all about flexibility and how athletic you are and how thin you are, and that's just I'm a curvy woman, and I just never really felt like I could do it, and my mind is always running a mile a minute. And yoga play is really there's so much to talk about in yoga play. There's a lot of themes, but one of the themes, breath, plays a really huge part in it. As a matter of fact, the lead character has these moments of anxiety throughout the whole show where she's breathing and freaking out. And then it isn't until the very end of the play where she, spoiler alert, well, she finally finds her breath. So I love that your studio is also called Breath. But I realized through the play that yoga, where it comes from in India, is about unity. It literally means unity and union. And it's not about fitness at all. It's actually antithetical to that. And I remember I took a class at the YMCA in New York City, and because I had taken a few yoga classes and I was starting to like it. And I remember the teacher shaming me for not doing downward dog correctly, and which is such a basic pose, but I think my hands weren't in the right spot. And she said, if you knew that, you wouldn't be in this class. And I was like, never going to yoga again. and I realize now through the direction of this play that that's not my fault. And if I had maybe had a teacher who was a little more sympathetic and interested in my journey of yoga, and then maybe I would have stuck with it. And so, yeah, it's been, especially in our challenging pandemic times, it's been really great for all the research I've done and in talking with the actors, because this production of Yoga Play is a co-production with Syracuse Stage. So we did production. We were in rehearsals all throughout January in the height of Omicron, and and had a really successful run, luckily with no cancellations. But the stress of that and rehearsing and masks where you literally, sometimes can't catch your breath, it felt very on the nose. And then the other aspect of yoga play is the capitalistic side and the retail side, and all about, yoga pants, and if you don't fit yoga pants, it's your fault, which a certain very popular company has touted, which is where a lot of the inspiration for yoga play comes from. And we've all really learned to live in yoga pants over the pandemic. So that was also illuminating. But I love hearing that your studio has a meditation aspect to it, because I have never really heard of that in a yoga location. And I feel like that gets us back to the original meaning of yoga. And because you can still sell things and have people come for any number of reasons without judgment, but reminding people that there is an aspect to just calming the mind and figuring out how to do that through your body and breath is so important. And that's really what yoga play gets to, outside of all of the other thematic things going on in it. So I hope to visit your studio when I'm in Rochester soon.
Yeah, I hope you do. Like, it's so unfortunate, your experience. And you bring up so many myths / realities, right?
Yeah.
Because there's 300 million people in the world practicing yoga right now. So that gives room for all kinds of experiences that are happening. But, yoga is 5,000 years old.
Yeah.
And it actually consists of 8 different aspects. They're called 8 limbs. Only one of 8 is physical. That's all, just one. The rest of them have to do with the foundation of just how to live a good life. Be nonviolent, be honest, don't be greedy, don't steal. Simple philosophical bedrock, right? That encompasses more of the 8 limbs than asana, which is the physical practice. But then you mentioned breath, that's one of the 8 limbs called pranayama. There's 3 different limbs that sort of direct down and sort of drill down into meditation, because yoga was meditation. 5,000 years ago, yogis were meditating. They knew that there was something really special that happened when you got still and you got quiet, and they wanted it. The problem was, the longer they sat, the more their back hurt, their shoulders hurt. It's so that's how asana, physical yoga, evolved. It was thousands, at least 8,000 years later after meditation. So I totally get what you're saying. And I know that if I were to go out on the street corner and start stopping cars and say, "What's yoga?" people would say things like downward facing dog, or it's hard, or I've got to be flexible. But I can say, especially because I actually have been doing yoga since I was 12. So I haven't done it as a trend. It was certainly not trendy most of this time. That when yoga really came to the US, it was late 1960s. There were 4 actual teachers that came from India primarily, that were taught by one yoga master in India. And they started bringing it to the US. And one of the biggest influences were the Beatles.
Yeah, I read about that in the Hare Krishnas.
Yeah, because they were introduced to meditation by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. They said, you know what, the United States would really be digging this. You should really go to the US. And that started this trickle of a couple of other major master teachers. I mean, there were 4 in particular that really made their mark. But yoga has always been passed down verbally, primarily verbal, teaching who's in front of you. And to be real honest, we have to admit that Western culture is fairly physical. We care more about how we look than how we feel.
Yeah,
we totally do. Yeah. And so the cool thing is it's changing. It's small, but I remember being in the world of yoga locally when I had no shows to class, or 1 person in class, or 2 people. And it was like that for a while. We started teaching meditation classes in our studios about 5 years ago. And I can say that there were many no-shows and one person. And now we have, now we have classes with 10, 15, 18, 20 people meditating. We just did a free program called 56 Days to a Better Brain. There's like science of meditation is based on this landmark study done between Harvard, Mass General, and they did this study for 56 days. And what they found by doing pre-study MRIs of the brains of the subjects and then post-study MRIs, that literally in 56 days, like 8 weeks, you change the gray matter in your brain.
Wow.
Like, literally change it. There's an increase in the gray matter and the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for memory, which matters, right? And there's a decrease in the part of the brain called the amygdala, which is sort of that like reactive part of the brain. And this change was unanimous. Everyone experienced those post-MRI changes. And so we did this free program. We do it once or twice a year called 56 Days to a Better Brain. And we had close to 500 people sign up into the program. So I am super inspired. I'm a definite meditator. Like, it took me a while, like it tapped me on the shoulder for a while and then it clobbered me over the head, and it really was the answer to my life that I loved so much, but at the same time, it wasn't balanced. It was stressful. Even though I loved it, I was still like, I was just doing too much. And the problem wasn't what I was doing, it was how I was doing everything. It was just way too full throttle, and meditation has just made me more focused and more effective, actually. And certainly.
Wow, that's so exciting and really rewarding, I imagine, and inspiring, because your journey has, you know a lot, clearly, and it's very impressive. And then, the way that you're just trying to help people physically and emotionally and mentally is I think one of the most beautiful things about yoga that has inspired me as well. I realized too, for the prologue, I should mention like what the play is about. So there is a fictional yoga company called JoJoman. And they are, in the beginning of the play, facing a little bit of a controversy where, they when the play has begun, they've already are kind of coming back from a controversy where the CEO said that, women who are not able to fit the yoga pants that's their fault, which is ripped from the headlines of a certain CEO. And then throughout they have another controversy, and they realize that they're faced with child labor accusations, where they're basically finding out that their factory in Bangladesh is using children to create their pants, which is also a problem in the retail industry across all different, retailers. And then, in order to recover from that, they decide to embark on a search to get a guru to help them recover. And then lots of other things happen, and I don't want to give it away. But it's a comedy, even though it does deal with a lot of really serious topics. But one thing I was thinking about when you were talking is the issue of authenticity, which is a huge deal in the play. And as a culture who've borrowed a practice from another country, because yoga, as I've learned, and you were talking about the Beatles, has really infiltrated our whole lives in ways that a lot of people don't even realize. Like, we think about positive thinking, that's part of yoga. Manifesting is part karma, all of those things and more, we've really borrowed from the East, and they've enriched us in so many ways that I don't think people even can gather. Thoreau and Emerson, they loved the East, and just really, for me, studying the tenets of the history of where yoga's come from was really illuminating and inspiring. And so, as a white woman who has a yoga studio and practice, and how obviously knowledgeable you are, I wonder if you've dealt with any of that in your life and as a business owner, because the play, Deepika's play really deals with, you know, who gets to teach us culture. And I think that that's a huge conversation in the arts as well. And, you know, like I'm a Latin woman, but I don't do yoga, and I'm directing a play called Yoga. But I, you know, I've done a lot of research. I can also speak to, you know, being a United States born Latina who doesn't speak that much Spanish, you know, but I can, you know, I still have my culture. So it's so complicated. And, you know, I think the play does say at the end that, yes, you can learn culture from people who are not necessarily from that place, if it's coming from a place of love and true, you know, dedication. So yeah, I'm just curious just to hear your experience.
Well, you know, I guess kind of like I said, with 300 million people practicing yoga, then like, I mean, how many million teachers are there? And like with anything, there will be some that will be very inspirational and really have deep knowledge in being able to share yoga from its roots. And then there'll be others that don't have that deep knowledge. So really each person's experience with it will be different. And I think that, you know, I mean, I can only speak for myself and for Breathe. I know that we have a meditation teacher training happening, and this gives people a chance to dive into the source materials, the Yoga Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, like all the things, the ancient texts that actually, I still remember, I moved to Rochester, when was this? It was probably 35 years ago. I moved to Rochester from this small town that I lived in Pennsylvania. I couldn't wait to take my first real yoga class. Because up until then I was practicing with records, right? So I take my first real yoga class, and I mean, yoga has been in the Rochester, Syracuse area for a long time, but it was so minimal. There really just wasn't much. And when the boom happened, when it wasn't just here, but it started on the West Coast and just moved across the country like everything does, the inroad was the physicalness. That's what people were able to say, like, oh, I don't want to chant. Don't give me anything spiritual. I don't want to be reading ancient texts. But I do. Madonna, you know, she showed everybody how you could make your body tones, use it as a form of exercise. So I don't want to ever dismiss that as a bad thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
it was like a door. It led people in. And the thing about yoga is you really don't have to, once people are practicing yoga and they're breathing and they're making peace with their body and they're having moments of silence, you as a teacher, as a studio owner, you don't have to work that hard to sell yoga. Yoga sells itself. It is the practice. It is the magic itself. So I think that like these inroads that, you know, these stereotypical / real inroads that we've had to get in through the physicality, the company you're referring to about the clothing, I still remember when no one could pronounce it. And I also remember like a solid decade at least, or maybe 15 years ago, when they quit selling size 12. They said, we're not selling that. And just today, I double checked to make sure I was accurate. Go to their website. It's fully diverse. It's really diverse. It's body diverse. So I feel like, in defense of yoga, I feel like the play is a moment in time and it's one person's experience. But I don't believe that it's reflective of yoga as a whole.
No, yeah, that's so important. I feel like now, we are really examining the retail industry and all the different subsets within it, especially with that new Abercrombie doc that just came out, and really examining the way that we wear clothing, the way we think about clothing. It's really fascinating. Oh gosh, I just lost my thought. I feel like if I had been introduced to all of the different limbs of yoga that you mentioned, I probably I would have been practicing ages ago. But that's really, I love hearing it as a door, as a gateway, the physical aspect.
Yeah.
And then people finding other rewarding ways of the practice. That's really, really awesome.
Yeah, and it's so funny, really, when I think about the fact that the gateway for me was the physical practice.
Mhm.
I remember like trying to like put my body into these like poses. There was no way. I'd have my brothers banging on my door. I'd be in my bedroom trying to make these poses. They would make fun. Like the fact that it was the physical piece that actually introduced me to the practice is kind of ironic, really.
Yeah.
But you know, the good news though, Melissa, is like it doesn't have to, yoga's a lifelong practice. I mean, I started with when I was 12. I'm 62 years old, so it's been 50 years. And
Wow.
I don't practice now the way I practiced then. I don't stand on my head anymore because it's not good for my neck. Doesn't mean it's not okay for someone else's. And I'm just really into sort of like how I'm living my life according to I practice being responsive as opposed to reactive. I certainly spent a ton of time being a reactive person, but I feel like there's always an opportunity to re-engage. So I hope our conversation actually encourages you to like, you know, step into a different door or go back to the same one and maybe experience it differently.
Yeah. Yeah. No, hey, I think I think I'm gonna be knocking on your door when I come put the play up.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, when you're in Rochester, please do. I would love to meet you in person. And then, are you from Syracuse? I mean, you mentioned that this is in collaboration with Syracuse Theater.
So I am the newly appointed Associate Artistic Director of Syracuse Stage. So I've been working remotely from New York City, but I just moved to Syracuse a couple months ago. And so I'm really close. I'm a 90-minute drive away from you now. And you said you have locations in Syracuse too, right?
Yeah, there's one in Fayetteville. You should definitely check it
Then
out.
I gotta go. Yeah, no, I'm excited. Yeah, it's also, I think, you know, as a newcomer to this area, you know, my only friends are the people that I work with right now. So it might be a nice way to also, you know, have community. So that'll be really great.
100%. Like, I really do think the whole thing revolves around community because none of it would be really all that engaging if you were just solo on your own. It's like being inspired by others, inspiring others, being in community with others. So I really think that, especially as a newcomer to the Syracuse area, I really want you to go there and meet Donna, who's the owner of that particular location. She's fabulous. And I know you'll be welcomed and you'll have a really nice introduction to yoga. I know you will.
Oh, I'm excited. Now I can tell her Cyndi sent me.
Please do. Please do.
And also, you know, going back to your point about all the different ways of like what yoga means, of like nonviolence and being honest, yoga play also gets to the sort of dirty, evil ways that, you know, billionaire companies profit off of, like the insecurity of women. You know, they call it an aspirational brand, and those aspirations are being thin and fit and of a certain echelon of people. And I think that because the CEO of a company that's profiting off of yoga should not be, you know, having anxiety attacks on a daily basis, and their employees and everyone feeling, you know, like their job is on the line, and it's all about the bottom line. And I mean, I guess it is a business, and you have to make money, and you know, but it's antithetical to the meaning of what you're doing, and so that is also what a lot of the play has to do with. And it sounds like breathe is doing it right, so that's good.
Well, you know, we're doing our best. I'm not going to say we're doing everything right. We're doing our best. We've certainly made mistakes. We're growing along the way. We have zero, like, I won't say zero, but we really don't have, well, we have no master plan. I can tell you that. It's kind of just like, it's sort of just like, what's next, you know? And that's, I suppose, a blessing and a curse. Like
Yeah.
when I say that I went into this really without a business plan, without really knowing anything about business, just wanting to share what I love. In so many ways, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I don't have a strong background in business that's directing me. Instead, I'm really following my gut, following my heart, watching what people are responding to. We're so open to feedback and suggestions. And so it's evolved like that organically. But, I have no idea what it's like to like run the business of a church, but I can only imagine that there are similarities. Like you have to pay the heat, and you have to pay the employees, and you have to, do the rent and all those things that make something have to make money, even though it feels like it's in contradiction to what it is you're offering. So I think it poses this ongoing question of like, how can we make things accessible and at the same time be able to be sustainable as a business? And that is the ultimate challenge. And I think, like I mentioned, the 56 Days to a Better Brain was a free program. We're currently doing something called 40-Day Challenge. That's a free program of yoga and meditation. So we do a lot of free. We do a lot of giving back to the community. I typically don't speak about it much because I do it for sure, so strongly and rigorously. And at the same time, we don't verbally make a big deal about it, but we're committed to it. And at the same time, some things cost money, like retail. Retail, I don't get to decide how much something is. It comes to me from the manufacturer. You go online and that's the price of what it is. It's not like the old days where you could just look at something and make up a price. I mean, it is very much directed by the manufacturer to the internet, to the boutiques that sell these sorts of things. So the whole thing's, it's interesting. And I suppose looking back, Breathe really is, it's a yoga studio. It's a retail business. It's a full food operation. Like our food is a huge aspect of Breathe. And when I say that it started with a juice bar, that really was because I thought, I want to have a place where I can go get something like that. And like, I wanted
the best ideas come from just your own personal desire.
Here. But the other thing is that as a dietitian, I had been in private practice at that time, about 17 years. And I knew that people really were losing touch with where food comes from. Like thinking it comes from the grocery store. Well, no, it actually comes from a tree or a ground or something like that first. So I really wanted to sort of bring back where food comes from and let people taste food that is delicious and also whole, real food. So our juice bar evolved into, we have a full production kitchen, a bakery, a cold press facility. My Pittsford location that started as 1,400 square feet in 2002 now operates 9,000 square feet.
Wow, that's great.
And collectively, now we have 6 locations. So it's a commissary kitchen that sends out those types of things to the other locations. And then every location has its own juice bar where you can get like your fresh smoothie, acai bowl, things like that.
Well, there are a couple scenes in Yoga Play where 2 characters have what they call dream time, where they're like required from the company to disclose their dreams and suss out meaning. It's very funny. But during those scenes, they have green juice, and the stage direction says they have green juices. They look hungry, as if like that's all they're eating or drinking. But I'm a juicer. I love juicing my own and like buying my own vegetables and going to the farmer's market and all that stuff. So, and I think the idea of having, I think that's really smart, by the way, of having a juice ready for you when you leave a class is, I've actually never heard of that. And I think, why hasn't anybody else done that? So good for you. That's very smart. Like if I knew that was waiting for me, that would be also a really good incentive to get through the class of whatever I'm taking.
You mentioned breath earlier, and like one of the reasons I'm so committed to the food aspect, the juice bar aspect, is like, how as a yogi can I be so committed to my breath and my body, but not care at all about the food I'm putting in my mouth? So, the last thing that I would really want to see is, someone finishing a yoga class, grabbing a Coke out of a vending machine.
Yeah.
Car. So I know why a lot of places don't do it. It's not easy to run a food business. It's the most complicated part of Breathe by far. And it's not, it's the part that's often like a break even, kind of like a loss leader. But it means something to me. Like I said, nutrition's my background, and how I got to yoga and how I got healthy was really changing the way that I was eating from my previous self, who was really just stuffing myself with the wrong things because I didn't feel good about myself. So it all ties together. It's such a, it's such a big, expansive practice. And like I said, that little asana piece, it's just one of 8 very big pieces, but it's an important one, and however people find their way in, to me, is great, as long as they find their way.